This morning, we filed a criminal complaint against Minnesota State Highway Patrol Trooper Ryan Londrigan, charging him with 3 counts in the death of Ricky Cobb II.
This county attorney is literally out of control. Open season on law enforcement must end, and it's going to end with this case.
Ricky Cobb II was shot and killed by a Minnesota State Trooper named Ryan Londrigan almost 6 months ago. And today, that county attorney you just heard speak, Mary Moriarty, charged Londrigan with murder, manslaughter, and assault for shooting him. And that is not sitting well at all with Londrigan's attorney, who you also just heard from, unleashing an attack on Moriarty right out of the gate. So how did we get here after so many months of waiting for a decision one way or the other in this case? And what does today's announcement mean for a possible trial? Kent took those questions today.
Yeah, Jana, almost immediately today, we heard some passionate and polarizing arguments both for and against these charges. And if this case does end up in yet another high-profile use of force trial, I'm told there are some key details and witnesses to keep in mind.
Those who have spent years studying police use of force prosecutions and even the public details of the Ricky Cobb shooting had trouble predicting whether charges would be filed.
I would say that this case has kind of been a close call all along, and so I didn't have a strong expectation one way or another.
University of St. Thomas School of Law professor Rachel Moran says even though the 3 charges Trooper Ryan Londrigan now faces range from murder down to assault, she says they're all related.
The underlying allegation in all 3 charges is that the officer should not have fired into the vehicle. What they're really saying is he did not have the right to use deadly force in this situation.
And Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty said this morning that she came to that conclusion based on the troopers' training.
They are not allowed to shoot at a car which is driving away. They're not allowed to shoot someone to prevent the car from driving away. They are only allowed to use deadly force if it will prevent great bodily harm or death to their partner or somebody else.
But in filings today, Londrigan's legal team argues that there was significant threat of bodily harm and death, something echoed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association later in the day.
Just in the last few years, we've had 2 instances, one in Virginia, one in Georgia, where officers were making a lawful arrest. The suspect fled, and both of those officers in those cases died. And so when we look at just not only the general threat to the public, but then we look into the 2 troopers in this case, they were dragged by this vehicle. They did suffer some injuries as a result of it.
But Moriarty says the officers are not trained that firing a gun is the answer.
Our understanding is also that they were trained that shooting someone is unlikely to stop them from driving the car away. In fact, most often people do drive the car away. So our determination was it was not a necessary use of force to prevent great bodily harm or death by that officer, Londrigan, or his partner.
But despite vowing early in the investigation to consult a use of force expert in making that decision, Moriarty said today that was not the case.
We were able to determine that charges were appropriate in this charge without the use of an expert.
The fact that there is no expert tells me that there is likely no expert that would agree with her conclusion that the officer should be charged with murder.
Professor Moran says whether or not that's the case could prove pivotal if and when the case goes to trial.
Because the defense will probably find an expert or multiple experts who say this use of force was justified. Will the state have someone to say it wasn't? So you can charge a case without an expert, but the strength of your case at trial may depend on whether you have an expert at that point.
We did not hear directly from the family of Ricky Cobb today, at least in person. Their legal team issued a statement praising the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and the Minnesota BCA for the investigation. In that statement, it also included a quote from Ricky Cobb's mother, Naira Fields Miller. She said, quote, "Ryan Londrigan stole my son from me. He gunned Ricky down for no reason while he was defenseless. Nothing can ever make up for that. But today's decision is the first step toward closure and justice." And Jana, I'm told we will hear plenty more from the Cobb family and their attorney tomorrow.
Yeah, we heard about the charges quite a bit today and opinions on those charges. What happens after we hear from Cobb's family legally? Just some hearings, and we don't have a trial date or anything like that?
Right, his legal team actually filed a motion to dismiss today. A judge will have to weigh in on that. There's a lot of those steps that still have to happen before we get anywhere close to hearing about a trial.
Okay, Kent, thanks so much.